This is the new Peugeot e-308. Is it a fantastic new electric car? Or is there one major problem that stops this from being recommendable? In this review, we're finding out. But first, this video is supported by PodPoint, winner of our Best Home EV Charger Test 2023. Look in our description below to find out more. So the third generation Peugeot 308 went on sale a couple of years ago, and you could have it as a petrol or a plug-in hybrid, and now we have a fully electric version. In fact, this is the first Peugeot that's available with those three different powertrains. There's nothing radically different about how the e-308 looks compared to the 308, but you might notice some E badging around the car. There's a green number plate, of course, and it gets new 18-inch alloys, which apparently have been designed specifically with aerodynamics in mind to help with the range on offer from the e-308. But rather than talking about this car compared to the rest of the 308 lineup, it's actually more relevant to talk about it compared to a Vauxhall. Why? Well, this car is very similar to the Vauxhall Astra Electric. Now, they might look quite different outside and inside, but underneath they share many of the same parts. They have the same batteries, electric motors, they're built on the same platform. So this probably has just as much in common with the Astra Electric as it does with any other 308. Is that a bad thing? Well, possibly. We'll explain why later on. But first, let's look at this interior, which is obviously very different from the interior that you get in the Astra Electric. Now, in the regular 308, that has a very good interior compared to the rivals that it's up against. In the e-308, this is up against a totally different set of rivals. So what is this like compared to a VW ID3, Cupra Born, Renault Megane E-Tech, Tesla Model 3? Well, the fact is, it still is an impressive interior in lots of areas. So the quality of materials is nice. You've got soft touch materials on the dashboard. You've got a nice layout to things as well. Yes, there are some harder plastics around, but they still feel like good quality, and it's all screwed together very well indeed. But this doesn't really feel like a totally knockout electric car interior, which, given the price, is a little disappointing. But we'll talk more about the price later on. Now, the infotainment system is, of course, essentially what you get in the regular 308. The main difference being you've now got an electric car menu here that gives you things like your efficiency, and it can help you set up charging times as well. But otherwise, this is the same system. It's got a slightly confusing fiddly layout. The response time isn't the quickest. What's helpful though is having these eye toggle switches at the bottom here. You can customize these shortcut buttons to take you to different menus. Underneath them, you've got physical controls as well, but it is a shame there isn't more of this to help control the infotainment system, and particularly the functions to do with the climate control, because the setup they have at the minute, using the touchscreen or some of these buttons down there, is just a bit fiddly and confusing and distracting while you're driving. One other quirky thing to point out, of course, as with all new Peugeots, is this small steering wheel setup. So this is nothing new for Peugeot, but if you've never sat in a new Peugeot, then just to remind you, you have a small steering wheel which you're supposed to look over to see the driver display rather than through as you would in most modern cars. Now, for me and my driving position where I have the wheel and my seat set up, it works fine. I can see the display, but it's not something that is going to work perfectly for everyone. Now, overall, this is a good electric car interior, but it isn't a cheap one.
Space in the back, by the way, is the same as the regular 308. It's not amazing given the room the car takes up on the road, and a Cupra Born will fit adults in the back more comfortably, certainly when it comes to headroom.
The e-308 gets a 361 litre boot, which is smaller than the petrol-powered versions of this car. So if you do get a petrol-powered 308, that has a 412 litre boot. But if you go for a plug-in hybrid or this e-308, then because of all the batteries and extra stuff that have to be fitted in, the boot capacity shrinks by quite a bit, to be honest. So the space that you're left with is very similar to what you find in an MG4, but it's smaller than cars like the VW ID3, Cupra Born, and a lot smaller than a Model 3 as well. There isn't even a front boot for any extra storage, and you don't get much at all in the way of underfloor storage back here either, which is a shame because where are you going to put the charging cable? There is, though, a fully electric e-308 SW on the way, and that is an estate version of this car. And when that arrives, that could be quite interesting because there really aren't many fully electric estate cars out there right now. Now, the important bits. We mentioned earlier that the e-308 has the same battery and electric motor as the Astra Electric. So that means this has a 54 kilowatt hour battery with a usable capacity of 51 kilowatt hours. It also has one electric motor driving the front wheels with 154 brake horsepower. So the official WLTP range of this car is up to 257 miles. You get a heat pump as standard, so when you're heating the interior of the car in cold conditions, it can do so in a more efficient way than an electric car that doesn't have a heat pump. But that range is pretty ordinary, to be honest. 257 miles might sound decently far, but when you consider the price of this car, it's really not that impressive. Yes, because this is a fully electric car which costs just over £40,000, and that's for entry-level Allure trim. If you go for range-topping GT, then it's more than £42,000, which is pretty serious money, even in the electric car world, where everything seems very expensive. This is more expensive than a Cupra Born. It's almost as much money as a Tesla Model 3 and way more expensive than all versions of the MG4. The Astra Electric, of course, being very similar to this car, has the same problem when it comes to pricing. So, does this feel like a £40,000 electric car on the road? Well, the first thing to point out is that there's nothing terrible about the e-308 on the road, but equally, there's nothing that really stands out compared to its rivals. So, the electric motor, for example, it has 154 brake horsepower, and the quoted 0 to 62 miles an hour time for this car is 9.8 seconds. Now, for a car like the e-308, that really is quick enough for the types of driving that you're going to be doing in this car. However, when you consider the rivals that this is up against and how quick they are, then the acceleration on offer in this car becomes very ordinary, in fact, quite pedestrian. There are all manner of rivals which are significantly quicker in a straight line than this. In terms of handling, this is fairly competent. You can place it confidently through a corner, it stays quite flat, the steering is smooth and reasonably consistently weighted as well, but it's not exciting. And when you think that a Model 3 is only a little bit more expensive than this car, then that's in another league entirely when it comes to driving dynamics. And as for the ride, it's definitely not like this is a very uncomfortable electric car that should be avoided at all costs, because it is comfortable on the move. Things are well controlled, even going over road imperfections, it's not too jarring. There is a slight firmness to everything, but it's definitely not enough to make this car feel uncomfortable. But given the price, it's just another area that doesn't really stand out compared to its rivals.
The e-308 is available in two main trims, Allure and GT, with a limited run first edition model topping the lineup. And really, this is a fine electric car, with a nice interior and a comfortable ride. But given that there are a host of other rivals available for less money, which offer a similar blend of talents to the e-308, it makes it hard for this car to stand out, just like the Astra Electric.
Thanks for watching this review. If you want to see another one, then click there. And if you want a great deal on your next car and you want to read the written review of this, then click there.